How did a once introverted programmer go from coding in a cubicle to leading an iconic American brand? Well, that's exactly what Omaha Steaks CEO Nate Rempe did. And along with CEO Forum Group founder Robert Reiss, they're your inside source for magical hacks that will transform the way you command a room, command your career, and maybe even command a company. Get ready. This is Brain of Command.
Hi, so Robert Reiss here, and today for our leadership hack, it's about the insider phenomenon. And this is a really different thing. This is where throughout an organization, there are unofficial people who influence, and they have this great power, and it's not a formal hierarchy, and it's sort of like in The Wizard of Oz, who is that man behind the curtain? But these people are making the difference, right, Nate?
The way I think about it is like this. If you printed off your org chart and then you flipped it over and there was invisible ink on the back, you would see your insider chart. And it would describe the trust flow, not necessarily the reporting structure, like the traditional org chart, your supervisor, your manager. This is really how stuff gets done. I think of insiders like the credibility credit union. They can give credibility and they can take it away. They can influence an idea. They can underwrite a person or a thought and make it happen, or they can shut it down.
For our guest today, we have Cindi Bigelow. And I have to say, Cindi is probably one of the best people in all of America at building this great family culture. Third generation, her grandmother started the organization, and all of you know and love Bigelow Tea, which is the most successful, largest independent tea company in America, and definitely all of the top specialty teas. And so with that, Cindi has this really special culture, and I've been there, and you could just see how people are. But now we're talking about how things really get done. Cindi, tell us about yourself and then start talking about how things really get done.
Well, myself is third generation, President CEO Bigelow Tea. My grandmother started it in her kitchen 80 years ago. And so I think in my position today, I work really hard to make sure I understand how we got where we were, what was important then, how important family culture is, and in addition to driving the business forward and making sure we're staying relevant and in front, how am I also doing everything necessary to maintain this culture, which I do think as time goes on makes Bigelow different than a lot of companies. I think 20 years ago, the kind of culture that we have and the way to lead was probably not as uncommon as I think it is today. So I pride ourselves on the culture, and I pride ourselves on the people, and being able to be number one and to be able to grow as we're doing, but also to maintain that family feel is very important and a very much part of what I do.
Yeah, I think the family company element kind of breeds insiders for a couple reasons. One, it does tend to have a deeper element of trust baked in its culture. I think that that's pretty well proven in research. And furthermore, that kind of the tenure, if you've got generations of time that cultures have existed, then insiders have, in effect, kind of breeded and built some of that culture. I see it in Omaha Steaks and even the lore of Omaha Steaks. If you think about the history, there are stories and tales of insiders that have done things that were phenomenal for the business. And it's hardly ever the big names that in leadership that come out and say, oh, they had this idea or this thing happened to make the business move forward. Rather, it was this person that came up with this idea. They were working in the plant or they were working in the distribution center and changed this one thing, and it set the company on a trajectory that would forever change its course.
I can't necessarily say that there's insiders that have changed the direction. I will say, though, it's everybody here is why this company is successful. My role, I don't really look at it as an insider, outsider. I look at everybody as valued, and you need to make sure your job is to bring out everybody's value in not a way that it's behind closed doors. I work really hard to get people to communicate. So if I have let an insider that doesn't like something, my job is to say, you got to talk to this person and you guys had to work as a team in order to come back with a solution. So for example, we are looking at some different programming necessary to improve our warehouse management system. And you're right. I had somebody that was saying, I'm not sure I support it. Here are some of the reasons why. And I said, this is great. You're so valued. You're so important, but you need to find your voice. I don't need to be the one saying, hey, by the way, this insider that is really, really talented doesn't really like it. I need to make sure that I say to the team, you guys got to work together. I don't want to hear the plan unless I have approval from this person, this person, this person. I don't care if you're a director or you're the manager, or if you know the business, you guys have to work together to hear the holes so that when I look at something, I know that the best of the best have reviewed it. So my job is to make sure everybody is listening to everyone, that that's not just coming to me.
If you're a leader of a company or a large team, the goal is to identify the influencers. And some of them may be more vocal than others, but they tend to be non-vocal in large settings, but they puppet master many of the decisions outside of the meeting room. If you're not a leader of a company or a large team and you want to become that, identifying the insiders is also advantageous because they can help get your ideas to come to fruition. Furthermore, there is politics in every business. And I think aligning yourself with people that do influence outcomes is a way to elevate careers over time. How can you take advantage of that? One way is really, in effect, to embrace and be aware of it and communicate with them in the place that they want to be communicated with, which is not amongst their peers usually.
Well, I try to make it amongst their peers because they get a bad reputation if they're not chatting and if they're doing everything in the background. That's not a great thing for their reputation. The word I'd like to use besides influencers is you shouldn't be an influencer unless you have the knowledge. So I want to find the ones that have the best knowledge, and those you can call should be the influencers. I hope if you don't have the knowledge, you shouldn't be influencing.
One thing I'll point out, the word influencers is used a lot in our society now, right? Especially with social media, Instagram. And there's a key takeaway there is influencers get consumers to buy products and use services because those consumers trust them. So it's not necessarily about knowledge or capability more than it is about trust. The key component to an influencer inside a team is really that they hold and own the trust. That affords them the authority to move things forward or move things backwards. You also said something I think that is right, which is it's not always a positive thing, that they can have a negative slant, and that needs to also be managed. And some of these things are kind of, in some sense, out of our control, at least direct control. And we need to kind of create ways to, in a positive way, manipulate them to create the outcomes that we want.
Well, one thing I'll say is in a business setting, the influencer better not be someone that doesn't have the knowledge, because then you as a leader are letting the wrong people influence.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
The only ones that should influence are the ones that have earned their stripes.
Yep.
And they can have all different types of personalities, but those need to be your influencers. And of course, I'm very open about it. If I have a new person in, I'm going to say, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to get any project forward unless you bounce it off of X, Y, and Z, because they're the ones that know how this company operates, and they can tell you where the issues are in advance. And so if you've done your homework and you've listened to the influencers that are the ones with the knowledge, your project is going to project forward very, very quickly. So I'm very, very clear in this seat that I listen to them, who they are. I just finished this one meeting today where this influencer, or the one that's incredibly knowledge, which also does have a very nice title, so they earn their stripes on their way up. In the end of the meeting, I just said, I hope you know how much you're honored. I hope you know how much we appreciate you. I hope you recognize the value that you have in this company, because he's a more quiet individual. And so I am so pleased that I've taken someone who's quiet, who could be an influencer in a negative way if he's not supportive, and said, no, you need to speak. We need to hear from you. And I'm very clear to everyone in the organization, your knowledge base is critical for our success and my success. So really keeping that in the open and not letting it all be behind closed doors, I think is also important for that trusting environment that you're talking about, Nate.
I agree with you.
We are about to take a commercial break. When we come back, what everyone wants to know, where do great new flavors come from if you're in the tea business? And we are going to find out perhaps there are people who are not even having that job, but had that influence and that knowledge that they brought forth some new great flavors for Bigelow Tea. We're about to take a commercial break, and when we come back, that is exactly what we're going to ask Cindi Bigelow. Back in a few. We'll get back to the show in just a minute. First, I want to talk about the holidays. As an executive, I understand how critical it is to recognize your top performers, reward loyalty, strengthen your most important business partnerships. That's where Omaha Steaks business gift services teams come in. They help leaders like you create unforgettable moments backed by over a century of guaranteed quality, service, and trust. They even have choice certificates so your recipients can choose their gift. And don't worry, they also have vegetarian options so nobody gets left out. Plus, when you order before November 1st, you'll lock in an extra savings and a $350 gift. Just go to omahasteaks.com/CEO and lock in your $350 gift today. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details. We are back on Brain of Command, and we are with Cindi Bigelow, the third generation CEO of the leading independent tea company in all of America, and globally it's also top. We're going to ask you now, Cindi. So we're talking a lot about this insider phenomenon where people have influence, where they come up with ideas. So a major thing when you think about teas are the new flavors. That's how, with Constant Comment, that's how you became the top tea company. So what's a story of someone who came up with a flavor and maybe that wasn't even their role and they just had something, but you knew that it could influence?
You're right. It's not about the title. It's about the ability to contribute, the creativity, the ability to pick up trends very quickly. And so in that room, you will have people that will be able to contribute that doesn't have a title, like they're not the director of R&D, right? So, but again, I have to put those people in the room. I've also taken people out of that room that had the right title because they were not allowing the creative juices to flow. And there needs to be gray space. There needs to be a level of uncomfortableness where, like, what are you thinking about this? What are you thinking about that? Not anybody has the answer. So the people that stay in the room, it's not their title. It's how they're able to digest and bring out ideas that contribute to the whole team's movement on where we need to be going with new flavors.
How do you decide to take somebody out of the room? Because that's really important. So put the
Yeah.
right people in, because that's what we want our listeners to understand is how to leverage the insider. So talk more about that.
If you're in the room and you're trying to push your idea, you don't really get to do that because then it's how the room reacts, no matter the title. So if the room is like, yeah, I can see that. You can feel it. That's my job, right? I can, oh, this is good. Let's write this on the board. Let's develop it. And if an idea is presented and everyone's like, I'm not sure. I don't really think so. Do we have any data to support that? And you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And I'm like, you're pushing an idea that isn't resonating. We have asked you to go back and get more information to support your idea. And then you shut down with all the other ideas that come in. You have ruined the creativity in that room. You are ruining the gray space that has to be able to fluidly, be throughout that meeting. And then you'll be extracted from the meeting moving forward.
That's a kind way to say it. An insider does something better inside a company than most do, and that's to build consensus, to lobby, and to get alignment before they're in the moment where they're trying to get their idea across the finish line. They have already done the convincing because that trust lives there.
In this room, it's a little different. We don't dumb down. I'm not going to take the best idea because it somehow passes, but it's not really a great idea. It's not pushing us a little bit. But in this room, there is no jockeying. I work really hard for I don't need jockeying behind the scenes. I'll feel, Nate, the room. Like I can feel if someone says, okay, what about this? And it's flat. Okay, great. There's no winners or losers in this environment. There's no credit goes to. It's a teamwork. And then the success in the marketplace, which is what we've had over and over. Thank God. Our golden turmeric that just came out is a home run. We've had our accounts come in, say it's the best tea they've ever had. So we do it as a team, and it's really just about listening and feeling, and you have to believe it has to be a success in the marketplace. What I have learned over all my years is that you have introverts and extroverts. It's all good. There's some range in the middle there. And my job is to create the space where you really are allowing the introverts to breathe and to share and to feel comfortable. So a lot of times that means, making sure, you're going back, you're re-asking the question, you're being quiet while they have the time to think, gather their thoughts and share. And then it'll also include going to some of my extroverts and my, A personality and say to them, you need to give more space. I cannot just have, which you have great ideas, but I can't have you just taking all the air space in the room. So you're just constantly trying to balance the introverts and the extroverts where everyone's feeling honored and everyone is contributing. So again, I think it's an important role of a leader is to recognize that.
And not just the CEO, right? Down through the culture, because you can't be in every meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you have to instill that idea to, allow the quiet voices to be heard. One thing I would love to hear from you on is promoting an influencer that was tactically good at their job, and they earn trust because of that tactical capability. And then that doesn't pan out in the way you would expect it. It doesn't translate in the same way.
You need to make sure that when you're making decisions, you do have the right people in the rooms. And again, title doesn't matter. Who do we need in the room?
Yep.
Who has the knowledge that we need? So that's number one. The second issue is the details. I do think it's important, and I tell my leaders all the time, you need to know the details, but you need to be able to go to 30,000 feet down to zero. If you're staying down to zero, that's never going to get you anywhere. If you're staying at 30,000 feet, that's going to be a big issue, right? So you're right, Nate. You have to have that balance of being able to understand the details because your people are going to follow you.
So how about that person that's right in role as a tactician? As a leader, how do you avoid the tendency to elevate them when in fact they're more effective and probably happier in their job, in their current role, with the ability to actually affect the doing?
When you have that, you'll see like sometimes your best operator or best mechanic becomes a supervisor. What is the training that we gave them to prepare them for this new role? So we have to look in the mirror a lot on that, Nate, because we do fail there. We don't do the right thing to give them the right training to be successful. I think that happens throughout the organization. And I just left a meeting in terms of our sales development team and what we're going to be doing there. And you're right. What are the skill sets needed? What's the training needed? Who are the people? Who are the influencers? Who are the ones with the knowledge to help them get to that next level? I don't think that I spend enough time on that exact question.
Our time is up. Thank you so much, Cindi, my co-partner, Nate. And we were talking about the insider phenomenon. And this is really the unofficial influence that often outweighs formal hierarchy. Be aware of that and see you next time.
Thanks, Cindi.
Thank you.
The insiders in your organization are the trusted voices who quietly shape decisions and culture. Identify these silent architects and build authentic relationships with them to multiply your influence. For more on today's hack, grab the free Brain of Command companion guide at omahasteaks.com/podcast. Next time, we'll explore Play the Part, how to be seen as ready for promotion and known as a big picture thinker. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your colleagues that you're hacking your career with Brain of Command.